Welcome back, boys and girls. In this video, I'm going to be carrying on with the animation stuff with Jetpack Compose, and specifically, we're going to be building a likes animation. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, they all do this. You have like that little heart. When you click it, it gets bigger, it turns red, and then it shrinks down to its normal size. If you click it again, it gets bigger again, changes gray, and goes back to its normal size. I'll show you exactly what we're going to be building. So pay attention to this little gray heart down here. Notice that it is deactivated right now, so it's not red, basically. If I click it, it gets bigger, turns red, and then shrinks back down to its normal size. If I click it one more time, it gets bigger, turns gray, and shrinks back down to its normal size. This is the animation that we're going to be building in this video. By the way, if you didn't watch my previous video where I showed you an introduction to Jetpack Compose animations, some of the stuff that I talk about in this video is going to be a little bit difficult. So I'll put a card up here. Go check out that video and watch the introduction, then come back and watch this video. Go into components, right click here, go to new Kotlin file and call this animated heart button because it's going to be a composable, but we're going to put everything that we need inside of this one single file. So I'm going to give you guys lots of room to give a better view here. So as I did in the previous video, or as I showed you in the introduction to animations video, we need to start by creating an animation definition. So I'm going to do heart animation definition, open this up, it's a singleton, it's an object. Now define the states, the different states that this heart can be in. So I'm going to do enum class heart button state. And for us, I think in the previous video I said there was going to be more than 2 states, but we can actually just use 2 states. So no matter which way you look at it, there's only 2 states here. There's either idle, aka it's like not liked, but if I click it, then this becomes active. So there's 2 states, active, idle, idle, active. So just 2 states that we need to transition through. But there's another thing that we need to animate, and that is the size of the heart. So like when I click it, it gets bigger very quickly and then shrinks back down to its normal size. That's the kind of core of this animation. It gets bigger, shrinks back down to its normal size. So let's do private value idle icon size and set that equal to 50 dp. Of course, this will change. Like if this was a production app, you'd probably have something much smaller. So if you look at Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, whatever, these sizes, this is for a demo, so the icon is going to be quite big, but you'd want to have a smaller size probably. So the expanded icon size will then be 80 dp. So this is the state that it just sits in all the time. That's this state right here. Then when you click it, the maximum size it gets to is 80 dp. Now, just like I did in the previous video, we want to create a transition definition. So heart transition definition and set that equal to a transition definition. And then the type that we specify here is our heart button state. So heart button state. And then inside of the function, then I want to define what the different states mean. So the first state is idle. We only have 2 states here. So getting that import, and we can get that static import just to kind of clean this up a little bit. Now open this up, and inside this function, we want to do this heart color. This heart color equals the color light gray. So that'll be the inactive or the idle state. And it looks like I forgot to define the prop keys. Whoops. So come up to the top here, just below the enum, we got to define our prop keys. First one will be the heart color. So set that equal to a color prop key. And like we did in the previous video, I can define a label in here. The label, I forgot to talk about that in the previous video, but the label is just for if you have multiple prop keys of the same type, you can use the label to distinguish between them. For us, it doesn't matter. So this is completely pointless for me to put a label here because there's only one color prop key that we're using, but I'll just put it here just for completion's sake so you can see it in action. Now we're going to do the heart size. So this would be a DP prop key. Again, I can use a label here, even though it is completely pointless because we only have one DP value that we're tracking and one color value that we're tracking. So that'll be the heart color and the heart size. So you can probably guess the next one is going to be the heart size here. So heart size and set that equal to the idle icon size. So that is our idle state. Now let's build the active state. So copy that, paste it below, change this to active, and the active state will be the color red. And this you might have thought to change the expanded icon size, but no. In either state, whether it is inactive or whether it's active, the size of the heart doesn't change. So active, inactive, doesn't matter. They sit there at the same size. What matters is during the animation, that's when the size is changing. So it gets bigger and then shrinks back down to normal size. So now that we have our two kind of states that this can transition between, now we need to define the transition. And there's actually two transitions that we need to define. Transition number one, remember we want to get the variable arguments the one with the variable arguments constructor. The first transition is idle to active. And the second one, I'll show you in a second here. I'm just going to open this up. I'm going to copy this and paste it down below. The second one is going to be active to idle. There's two transitions that we're making in this animation. When I click it, it's going from idle to active, so it gets bigger and then smaller. And then from active to idle, gets bigger and then smaller. Basically, they're exactly the same. They're just transitioning two different colors. So inside of the idle to active transition, we want to do heart color using tween. And we can just do, duration equals 500, get that tween import. And this should be duration in milliseconds. So duration milliseconds, set that equal to 500. The next thing that we're going to add to our animation is the heart size, of course. So this one will be different. The last one in the previous video and this one right here, we used tween. Now we're going to be using keyframes. So keyframes, and open this up into a function, and we want to do duration in milliseconds and set that equal to 500. We want to do the expanded icon size. So expanded icon size at 100. That's like the first keyframe. So one of the arguments is the duration in milliseconds. Then we want to do the different keyframes. So I'm saying at 100 milliseconds, I want it to be the expanded icon size, and then at 200 milliseconds, I want it to be the idle icon size. So you can imagine that this animation is going to be 500 milliseconds in total. The first 20% of it, so 100 milliseconds, it's going to get big. It's going to get big really fast. And then it's going to shrink back down to its normal size. So that's how we define things using keyframes. And you could use any number of keyframes. Here I've only used 2. So we have at 100, at 200, but I could do this at, however many times I wanted, 300, 400. Of course, you can't exceed the total duration, but you could have as many keyframes that you want within that total duration. So there we have an example using keyframes. That should be up there. I think that, it's because I ran out of space. Okay, so it's just doing some weird formatting thing. So yeah, there's our first transition from idle to active. Now we want to do pretty much the exact same thing. So I'm going to copy this, go down to our other transition. I want to do heart color using tween, same thing, 500 milliseconds, and then heart size using keyframes, exactly the same thing. So whether I'm transitioning from idle to active or active to idle, the animation is the same. There's just 2 of them. Now let's work on building the composable. So go to the top here and annotate this with @composable. And I'm going to break this up into 2 different composables. The first one's going to be private, so nobody else can see it anywhere else in the project. I'm going to call this heart button. It'll take a modifier as input. So modifier, it'll take the button state, the heart animation button state as input. Spelt this wrong. This needs to be modifier. Make sure to get the compose import. I always get the wrong one. The next argument will be state. This will be a transition state, and I'll explain that as we go through this. Get that import. And then a function will be the last one. This will be on toggle. It'll be a function that takes no parameters and it returns nothing. Obviously, you can probably guess what that is. That's what's going to be called when you click on the heart. That's the toggle button. So now we need to define what happens in these 2 states. So if I do if the button state dot value equals active. Oh, whoops, this needs to be wrapped in mutable state. I forgot that. This needs to be a mutable state and then pass the type of our heart animation definition. So if the button state is active, well, what do we want this to look like? Then we want that red heart. So if we go to our demo here, we want this red heart to be showing. If it's inactive, then we want that gray heart to be showing. So how can we do this? One way you might be thinking is to just use an icon. So I could just do, icon and build out an icon that way. I tried that originally, and when I was toggling between the different states, it left pixels on the screen, like random colors on the screen, and it looked broken. So I would recommend not doing that. So instead, we're going to be loading an image into an image composable. And in order to load an image from a composable, we need an image in our resources. So currently, if we go to like drawables, go to resources, go to drawables, we don't have actually it looks like I already have it in here. So this should not be already in here. You're not going to have heart red and heart gray in here. I must have accidentally added them ahead of time. So what you're going to want to do is go to the source code for this project. I'll bring it up right here, and there'll be links down below, by the way. And go to the drawables folder and get this heart red PNG. Just right click, save it to your computer. Same with this gray one, right click, save it to your computer. I've already formatted them to the correct good sizes to use. You can just save these and then get those into your project. You can either drag them in, or you can go to the resource manager like we've done before, click on the plus sign, import the drawables, just get them into your project. That's all you need to do. So once you have them in your project, you should have them in your drawables like I do right here. And now we need a way to display these things. So currently, we could go, there's nothing wrong, well, kind of nothing wrong, I guess. You could go image and you could do, let me get that image import. You could do image and you could do image bitmap, or let me see, bitmap equals image from resource. And you could get the image that way. But remember earlier in this course, I said that calling these functions loads the image synchronously. So it runs the risk of slowing down your application because it does it on the main thread. So a better way to do this would be to build an asynchronous function to do that for us. And that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go into our utils package here, go into image utils, and we have this load image or load picture function that we built earlier. We're basically going to copy this and make it so that it only will load from a drawable. So I'm going to copy this whole thing, that whole load picture function, paste it down below. I'm going to get rid of the URL argument. I'm going to leave the drawable resource annotation here. I'll call this drawable and get rid of the one that loads from the network. So that would be, it would be this one. Get rid of the glide stuff that loads from the network, and instead just load that drawable and then return that. So now we have two load picture functions. One is for strictly loading a drawable. The other one is for loading something from the network. So now we're going to use the one for loading the drawable. So above our image composable here, I'm going to write load picture and pass a drawable. So r.drawable.heart_red, and you'll need to get an import for that. And then if that value is not null, so I can do .value let, then I have access to that image. I'll pass that into the Lambda, and I will use that image composable here. And now I can do bitmap equals the image.get, should be image.asImage bitmap, right? And then we can add our modifier, so equals modifier, the modifier that's as a function argument. Add a clickable attribute to this modifier, pass the onToggle function to onClick, and then pass one more argument, the indication argument. So set indication equal to null. I'll come back when we test this app, and I'll show you what it looks like when you don't set this to null. I'll come back and I'll explain that because it improves the look of it quite a bit, I think. So again, I'll talk about that. So now width, we want to animate the width, so we can do state and do heart size. That's that heart size DP, or that DP prop key that we have down in our animation definition right there. And then I can copy that and change this to the height. And again, we're animating both the heart, or both the width and the height for this animation. It grows and then it shrinks back down to normal. So that's why I'm passing the width and the height here. So that's good. Now, what about the idle state? So I will come down, do else, and inside of the idle state, I also will be calling load picture. We're gonna have the same kind of logic here. Pasting this in here, except I want to change this to heart gray because that is the inactive state, and everything else is the same. Looks like this is giving me a warning. I need to annotate this with the experimental coroutines API, so do that. And that's our heart button. So obviously this isn't quite done because, like, what is this button state thing? We need to build this, what is this transition state thing? We need to build this out of our animation definition. So this is private. Now we're going to build another composable that uses that private composable. So I'll do composable function animated heart button, and this will be our final one that we actually use inside of our UI. Do modifier, and then button state. And that'll be, again, mutable state heart animation definition, just like we did in the composable down below. And then just the on toggle function. So the same function arguments as we did in the heart button. The only difference is this state thing. So as you probably guessed, we're going to initialize the state thing inside of this animated heart button. So first, let's define the to state and the the initial state and the final state. So do to state equals if the button state dot value equals idle. In that case, our state should be active. So we can get that. Otherwise, then it is idle. So if the current state is idle, change it to active. If it's active, change it to idle. That's all it's going to do. It's just going to change the state. Now we want to define our transition. So value state equals transition. Open this up and we have access to the definition. So now we can use that definition that we built down below in our heart animation definition. So heart transition definition. And that should ask for an import. Let me get that import. So that's, if we scroll down here, that's this transition definition right here. Just getting that in there. And now finally, we will do the init state and the to state. So init state equals button state dot value. And then the to state will equal the to state. So whatever the current state is, and then whatever the next state is, just defining that transition. Now, finally, we can use our heart button. So I just want to write heart button, pass whatever arguments I need here. So I'll format these to make this look a little better. Go all to the next line. Pass the modifier, pass our button state, pass the state, which is the transition, and then pass the on toggle function. And then we can add this experimental coroutines API. So that's it. Now we can use our animated heart button. So if I go to recipe list fragment and come down, let's comment out the pulsing demo. We don't care about the pulsing demo anymore, but we can't actually just use like the animated heart button. So if I go animated heart button, and I try to do this, it's not going to look good. Number one is, what happens when I toggle? What is the button state? The modifier is obvious. That would just be modifier. But the other things are not obvious. So we actually need to wrap this into a row, center it, and also keep track of that state. So you could do that in the view model, like we've been keeping track of all of our other state, our mutable state objects. But since we're just doing a demo here, this isn't actually part of the application. I'm just going to use remember to keep track of the state inside of the composable. So value, we'll do state equals remember, which will be mutable state of, and set that equal to idle. So get those imports, get the import from the heart animation definition. Ooh, that was a huge import. Let's get the static member so that looks a little better. So that's how we're going to keep track of the state. I'm just going to do pass the state right there, and now define what happens when I toggle it. So here I just want to change the value to whatever it isn't is. That sounded dumb. I want to change the value to the opposite. So if it's idle, change to active. If it's active, change to idle. So state.value equals if the state.value equals idle. In that case, I want to change it to active. So I would just do active. Otherwise, change it to idle. So if it's idle, change it to active. If it's active, change it to idle. That's all it's doing, just toggling it. So again, this stuff would be obviously better kept track in the view model, but this isn't part of the course. This is just like, well, it's not part of the project. This is just a demo, me showing you how to build an animated heart. So if we ran this right now, this would work, but the animated heart would be like up in the top left-hand corner. So let's add a row to center this and make it look a little better. So let's add a row here, get that import, come up here, do modifier equals modifier mod if, I always spell this wrong, modifier. Why is modifier so difficult to spell? Dot fill maximum width dot height. Let's do 200 dp. And let's get those imports, get the height, get the dp. Go horizontal arrangement equals arrangement dot center. And then inside of our row, this is where we're going to put our animated heart. So let me grab this, cut it, put it in here, and that will center it and make it look a little better. Okay, so I think we're ready to run. So let's run it and check our animation. I should have done like a margin on top or padding on top, but anyway, here it is. So we click it, you can see that it grows, it shrinks, gets activated, gets deactivated. And this is something that you can use in any one of your projects. Yes, you have my permission. Go ahead, steal it, use this heart in any one of your projects. It's pretty cool. I think it looks pretty much exactly like what Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, or I guess Twitter and Instagram, maybe not Facebook, but it looks like that classic like animation. Pretty cool, pretty easy to keep track of, easy to use. That is going to be it for this video. Hopefully I've given you some ideas. I've inspired you. You're going to go out there, you're going to try and animate some stuff. You're going to build some cool things and animate them. That's really what I was trying to do here, because the animations API with Compose is really, there's just so much you can do. There's so many different ways to do the same thing. There's no like, it's also kind of confusing. Like if you read the transition definition class that I showed you in the previous video, it's quite daunting, I would say. There's a lot of weird names and specs and different objects that if you follow them all the way down the line, this extends that, that extends this, that extends 10 other things. It's kind of confusing. So I think really you just got to play around with it, use the things that I've showed you, and try to come up with some cool animations of your own. And if you come up with any really cool animations and you want to share them with the community, which I suggest you do, check out this Git repository. So github.com, Gurpreet Compose Cookbook. I've contributed to this this GitHub repository. You can see there I am right there. It's a bunch of different animations, a bunch of different compose things, basically. I've added my heart animation to this. This is where I got the idea for the shimmer animation. So there's that shimmer right there. And that's what we're going to be actually working on in the next video. So if you want to contribute and add to the, massive examples, because the more people that add examples, the better for everybody. If we build these animations, they can very easily be reused, as you saw in this video. So yeah, I encourage you to, fork it, create a pull request if you come up with something cool. So as I said, in the next video, we're going to be working on the shimmer animation. So if I was to perform a search, see that shimmer right there, kind of brings that gray down and makes it look like it's loading nicely. I'm actually probably going to change it a bit. I'm going to make it go diagonal. I think that looks better. I saw some guy with Swift UI do this really cool diagonal one. I'll actually pull it up on YouTube and I'll show you. Yeah, this guy right here. So he built this this shimmer animation. I think his looks better. Like if you go backwards, how it kind of goes like horizontally across. I think his looks better. So probably in the next video, I'll build one that looks like this because I just think it looks better like that. As always, do not forget your engagement. It's absolutely mandatory that you go down there and you leave some engagement. These videos are free. That's the least you can do. Just go down there, click that, little gray thumb, looks like this, click it, turn it blue, leave me some kind of engagement, animated engagement, come up with something unique. I love reading your guys' comments about engagement. And yeah, I guess we'll see you in the next one where we work on building out that shimmer animation. And don't forget your engagement again. Hey, what are you still doing here? The video's over. Well, since you're still here, I guess I'll show you the best Android courses that exist on the planet. I got all kinds of high quality courses. If you scroll on down on the homepage, there's the Jetpack Compose one that you're watching right now. There's that course. We have MVI architecture, if you've ever been curious about that. We have my classic powerful Android apps with Jetpack architecture. This shows you everything from, the focus on this one is pretty much database caching. We get data from a real API, we cache it, we basically design an app to work when there's no network connection. That is what this project is all about. We have some UI testing, another UI testing, HILT, which we actually went over in this course. We got clean architecture. This one's probably the best. This is definitely the best course on my website. If you are a professional or you are looking to get into the industry, the skills that you learn in this course are absolutely fundamental. This will give you a big edge in any job environment, whether you're applying or you're already at a job and you want to just improve your skills. This is a really, really, really high quality course. It's hard. Your brain might explode while watching it, but you will learn a lot. You'll learn a lot of really, really fundamental skills. Anything from getting data from the network, caching data, designing different layers, abstracting out the different layers so that you can write unit tests, espresso tests, so UI tests, Dagger, navigation components, everything. It's beautiful. Definitely, this is the best course on the website.